number 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. It is roundtable time. MGoBlog Roundtable, that is, as we are getting ever so close to what people believe will be an epic clash between the two best teams in the country. As I didn't know this was something that Seth said in the break, that these are the two best teams.
Offenses, sorry. Sorry. I went back and made sure I was getting the numbers right. Two best offenses.
Two best offenses in KenPom history. This is a battle of equals, so to speak. So who will reign supreme? Joining me to look forward to that matchup and hopefully beyond is the man that started it all over at the blog, Brian Cook. Brian, how are you this morning?
I'm well.
You just heard Seth Fisher speak. Seth, good morning. How are you?
Chag Sameach. Happy Passover, everybody.
And Craig Ross. Craig, how you feeling? How you feeling about the Wolverines heading into this weekend, man?
I'm feeling good about the Wolverines heading into this weekend. But, while we were talking, I thought it would be a good thing in this country if we had some sort of day, which is a conflation of Groundhog's Day, April Fool's Day, and Talk Like a Pirate Day. Someone should come up with something that kind of puts all those three things together, and we'd really have a good holiday, unlike, many of them that we have. So that, celebrate wars, we're going to celebrate talking like a pirate by a groundhog.
What was the show that used to come on Fox, or you could look inside someone's, they were like, you had the different voices in someone's head? Was it Herman's Head? Was that
yes.
What it was called? Herman's
wow,
Head?
that's a deep cut, Sam. I thought I was the only one who remembered that show. Do you remember The Watcher starring Sir Mix-a-Lot?
I don't actually. I don't.
I used to watch that on the WB, or possibly the other one. I forget. It might have been UPN. I think it was UPN.
Oh my God.
But boy, the voices talking in Craig's head, that would be very, very interesting to behold, I say. But Brian, just as you look at this Michigan basketball team heading into the Final Four, it feels like, and you can talk specifically about Tennessee or just the buildup of the 4 games, it feels like they found that stride that we were looking for them to find again. They had it early in the season. They just, I didn't think Tennessee was going to be in that game, but I thought it might go to the second half. It didn't even make it that far.
No, once they had that early spate of offensive rebounds peter out, they just didn't have anything else. And I think looking at Tennessee's team, you can understand why they have some big guys, but they don't have a whole lot in the way of athletes, and they're heavily dependent on one guard. And that was the same deal with Alabama. And I think the difference between those two games was just the fact that Filan went off for 35 and Gillespie had 23 on basically the same shot quality. Mm-hmm. So, Arizona presents a different challenge because they're not heavily dependent on any one player. They're pretty balanced overall, just like Michigan. They have a lot of size. The one thing that they don't do is they don't shoot many threes, but it's not because they can't. It's because they don't have to. So it's a really interesting year in college basketball because I've been scouring KenPom, and there have never been more than 2 teams in a season to shoot 60% from 2. This year there are 8. So there's been a pretty big shift in the way the game's played, and that brings. So you have a Final Four where you have Illinois, which is one of the most 3-heavy teams in the nation, and then Arizona, which is I think 3rd from last in number of threes attempted. So there's a lot of variation in this year's Final Four. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. So you mentioned their elite 2-point offense, but Michigan is an elite 2-point defense that can match the size and have maybe the most imposing defender around the rim in all of college basketball. How does that impact this game, Seth Fisher? This matchup where, as Brian said, they don't take a lot of threes, and because they are able to dominate inside. Well, what if they can't dominate inside?
So that's been the thing with Arizona. I did a study yesterday that I published on the blog about like how size affects these teams offensively and defensively. And Arizona had a pretty linear relationship to the size that they were playing against. And then you see it when you go and watch the games. I was watching the Utah State game that they just played a couple weeks ago or last week. Where Utah State had not a ton of size, but they had a really good rim protector, like one of those super athletes. So like the guy that you would want to defend Arizona, the perfect player would be like Moussa Diabate, right? Just that extremely athletic guy who can make you inefficient at the rim, because that's what Arizona does. They have a lot of plays that will get them to the rim. Like Brian said, they can shoot a three if they want to, right? If you double their bigs, they're just going to kick it out to Jalen Bradley, and he's a 40% 3-point shooter. Like that's not going to get you out of the hole. What you can do with them sometimes, and we saw this with Kansas, we saw this a little bit with Cincy, they if you can make them less efficient at the rim is the way to stop the monster. Now, defensively, Arizona's got the same power that Michigan has, and Michigan wants to score at the rim as well. They're the number one defense in transition. Michigan really needs transition to make their offense very effective. So, I mean, this is strength on strength, and I think it's going to be a very tough game because these two teams are very, very good for basically the same reason.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting year in basketball. As Brian points out, if you look at efficiencies, right now it's slightly more efficient to shoot twos, big picture, than threes. And that hasn't really been the case in the recent past. It's been fairly balanced. But right now, twos are more efficient than threes. Big picture, without looking at exactly where these twos are being taken from. Illinois, who I think is the biggest team in the country, or close to it, is pretty much a team that shoots threes. Right? And Arizona, also a very big team, doesn't shoot a lot of threes, even though their 3-point percentage is only slightly lower than Michigan's. I think they're like 36.7 versus 36.9 for Michigan. Michigan's more balanced. They shoot more threes, but they also want to get to the rim. So it's quite interesting to see the kind of variations that are going on. Also, I mean, looking at Michigan and Arizona, these are the two best defensive teams in the country, at least in KenPom. I'm pretty sure this is right. And might mean does this imply this might be just kind of a land war sort of game, particularly if the refs don't, quote, want to decide the outcome? Might we see a really ugly game with just a lot of pushing and shoving and grabbing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, how this game is officiated is going to mean a whole lot in terms of what the sort of game looks like. So it's fairly curious. The whole looking to the end of the season, the end of the NCAA run is very curious and interesting.
Yeah. It's so a couple of things. I watched Arizona some this year. The one game I watched from start to finish was the game against Texas Tech. Now and they lost that game. Now it's not the best measure because Koa Pete got hurt early in that contest. He went out and JT Toppin went off. I mean, JT Toppin had he had like 30 points in that game. They had no real answer for him in that contest. And only lost it by a few points. But man, I still feel like one of the keys is I would really test them in the post some early in this game. Outside of getting Yaks off the way that Yaks has gotten off to start these tournament games, I want to get some early post touches to see how they're going to. I want to see if I can get Adai or Merez to have some effectiveness in the post and see if they're going to continue to try to play that straight up, which ideally they're going to want to do. They're going to feel like they're capable of doing. But I just feel like Adai, especially, he could have some success in this game. And if he does on the offensive end, he's one of those guys where you make them have to react. Are they going to continue to just say, hey, you know what, we're going to we'll live with the one-on-one matchup? Or can you get them to start helping out, trying to rake at the basketball? Now you get him in rotation. I think, Brian, three-point shooting for Michigan can be a separator in this contest, but the type of threes, the quality of threes, obviously going to be a big, big deal here.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that Mara is the perfect guy to go up against Krivas, though, because he's gotten a lot better over the course of the year. He's relied a lot less on that short hook, and he's gotten a lot more baskets actually at the rim off his post-ups, and I think that's been a major mark of progress in his season. But Krivas is 260 and 7'2", so he's not a guy who's Mara's going to be able to move very much. So I kind of feel like Arizona's probably going to just let that happen. And if Mara,
and to your point, I think you're exactly right. They're going to feel confident in that matchup, but I would challenge Adai, just in the same way that we challenged Yaks in terms of his aggressiveness. I mean, the work that he does before he gets the ball just isn't good enough in a matchup like this. I mean, there has got to be work put in to get better position. If he's catching the ball 18 feet and taking 5 or 6 dribbles, then you lost the battle before it began, especially in this matchup. Got to get better post position. It may not be effective. To your point, Brian, it may not work, but that's why I'm probing it early.
Sure,
I'm probing it early to see if he can be effective. I'm probing it early to see if I can maybe draw a foul or two. If it doesn't work, then fine. We got plenty of other options. I think that's been the beauty of Michigan is that, I thought they were going to dominate in the post against Alabama, and that wasn't how they won that game.
Well, Alabama was going under on screens, which I do not think this team is going to do. They're a drop coverage team, so they're going to just live with whatever happens off of that. And Michigan plays drop coverage whenever they can with Mara, so it's not like they haven't had experience in practice going up against a 7'2" guy in drop coverage. So I feel like that's a reasonable expectation for Cadeau to be able to make some things. Like Michigan's a really good lob team, so I feel like that drop coverage might be something that they can get after a little bit, especially if you know it's coming and you've got a week to prepare for it. Like I feel like there will be some actions that Michigan probably hasn't shown all season. This is kind of like when you get to the Ohio State game and you open up the playbook and you got all the stuff in there that you haven't been running. I mean, this is a time to really focus on this one opponent, and whatever happens in the second game happens in the second game. This is the second best team in the country. This is the best game in the history of KenPom. There has never been a game between teams with this ratings that are collectively higher than this game. This has a claim to be the best game in the history of college basketball. I mean, comparing errors is difficult, but these two teams are so far and ahead of the average college basketball team this year that it should shape up to be an epic battle, and I don't really know who's going to come out on top.
Well, you're a little too young to remember Kareem going against Elvin Hayes in back, and that game was, in front of a lot of people. I think in Houston. I think it was at the Silver Dome or whatever the hell, maybe not the Silver Dome, whatever the dome it was in Houston, and it was televised nationally at a time when a few things like that happened. So anyway, but yeah, you're right. This is the best two offensive teams and probably defensive teams combined, playing in the recent past, last 5, 6, 10 years maybe. So yeah, this game's a big deal. I have a question for all three of you guys. Is Krivas a better version of Oscar Clough? Because Oscar Clough gave us problems.
I think he's better than Oscar Clough.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
that's a problem because Oscar, we struggled with Oscar Clough.
well, we struggled with Oscar Clough committing 15 fouls and getting called
That's
for 4 of them.
true.
I know.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is true. They allowed his gumpiness to be a a positive. Like gumpiness shouldn't be a trait that is beneficial to you, and it was in that game, right? So hopefully the officials don't just bury the whistle. But I wonder which matchup in the front court outside of Krivas. If you believe that Krivas is going to be too physical for a die, which I could see you could really make a case for. Man, between Yax and Marez against Karchikov and Pete, a couple of freshman guys, a couple of guys who are going to be at a strength disadvantage in those matchups. Man, I just, which one is Michigan going to be able to impose its will the most? I think this is where there could be an advantage game.
Well,
that's
I feel
kind of where
like
I thought it was going too. Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like so Krivas only plays about 2/3 of their minutes. So you got a third of the game where he's not on the floor. And I think Michigan will probably match that with Mara, right? So I think Michigan has an opportunity when Awaka comes on the floor because he's a tremendous offensive rebound. He's also one of those offensive lineman guys we just played against Tennessee. So they were not particularly effective unless Michigan got caught on a switch and their rebounding kind of petered out after a while. So I think that there's going to be this third of the game where you have Yaxel Lendenborg against Pete or Awaka, and I don't think those guys have the vertical ability to play with Yaxel. So I feel like that's going to be an opportunity to make some hay, especially because Pete's a freshman,
Yeah.
Like we saw Nate Ament go up against this Michigan team. We saw Amari Allen go up against this Michigan team. Pete is a different beast because he's 6'8", 235. He's not willowy. He's not thin. He's not a wing. So he's not going to be as physically overwhelmed by those two guys. But I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a shock on his part. And he's played in the Big 12. It's not like Michigan's going to bring something that he hasn't,
Right.
He's seen good players. But I do think that Yaxel Lendenborg is going to be like, oh, he's a 23-year-old lottery pick and I'm an 18-year-old lottery pick.
Yeah, it's a great point. Nate Ament, he looked like just a guy in that game. Can you really tax them on?
You know who he looked like in that game? He looked like Amoni Bates.
Yeah, man. He had his hands full. And if Yax is on what he's been on over the first, 3.5 games of the tournament, they can't defend him, in my opinion. Not one-on-one anyway.
No, I mean, teams are just giving him open threes in the hopes that he'll miss them. And he's up to 37% on the season. He had that lull, but that corresponded with the calf injury. So I feel like whatever you're trying to do with Yaxel Lendenborg, leaving him open three is not an option, but that's what teams have been doing. And Michigan is shooting super hot. But if you look at their shot quality in the tournament, like from three, it has been off the charts, like just wide open look after wide open look. And I don't think that's going to happen as much against Arizona. So I think a key player is going to be Trey McKinney because he's done something to me that is impossible to do, which when he takes a mid-range jumper, I'm like, okay, that's a solid shot. He's shooting 55% on twos away from the rim. Most of those are challenge shots. Most of those are fadeaways, but he just has the touch. And against Michigan State a couple of times, there were a number of possessions where he had to just bail Michigan out with that jumper. And I feel against this team, Trey McKinney is going to have to hit, I'm going to say 3 mid-range jumpers for Michigan to win this game and provide Michigan with a floor on their possessions that don't go well because there's going to be a number.
Yeah, that's a big. Those 2-point jumpers are a big deal for Arizona too because they don't take a lot of threes unless they're there for them, right? So, one way you can get, the size can actually affect those a lot. But Koa Pete, I wanted to bring this up. Brian was just mentioning Amani Bates. Like Pete takes a lot of 2-point jumpers as well. He's not very good at them. I think he's got 130 or 160. 130 2-point jumpers, 164 shots at the rim this year. So you can get him away from the rim. He's, one of those freshmen who's decided he's going to take the shot when he gets the ball already. Now he does have a high assist rate, but that's because everyone on this team can move the ball around a little bit. I think that's where Michigan's really kind of have that one advantage, that Pete has been able to take advantage of guys who are younger or smaller than him, and he's usually a matchup problem. But Cincinnati really had to handle that guy, and I went back and was like, who is this dude who was covering him? It was a Florida State transfer who used to be a 5-star who kind of like went down and then came back up again, Baba Miller. And that's kind of that length and athleticism has really affected Arizona, especially when you push them into mid-range. Not a lot of teams have been able to, but when you do, they're as efficient as anybody else. They're 1 point per possession, which is good for mid-range, but not good enough to beat Michigan in this whole game.
I mean, their offensive efficiency is predicated on two things: offensive rebounds and getting to the line. And that's not something that looks to be particularly effective against Michigan. I mean, they just played Tennessee, and neither of those things happened. You're playing a defense that's like 13th in the country at giving up free throws. And that's a large portion of their efficiency because they shoot really well from the line. So I think that's where the matchup is won and lost, is like, what does the offensive rebound look like and how many times does Arizona get to the line? Because if they're just shooting, like half of those shots, 40% of those shots are going to be other twos that they're not hitting at a great rate, 43%. It's a good rate, but it's not a great rate. And I just feel like as long as Michigan doesn't put them on the line and has shot volume, eventually, they're going to break through from three a little bit and they're going to win the game. But that's a big question,
Yeah, several great points. Keep them off the glass. Prevent the second chance, which is such a huge part of their game. Not as huge as Tennessee, of course, but still a big part of their game. But you raised the mid-range efficacy of Trey McKinney. Like, this dude, I just feel like he's automatic, to the point where for it feels like a month we've been saying, man, I'm looking to get him in the mid-range.
I wouldn't go that far.
I'm like, well, he's like he's automatic.
I looked up his numbers and I was surprised because it was like 55%. It seems like so much more.
It does. Maybe that's brought down by early in the season.
I don't know.
Because here late in the season, it's like, man, he gets to mid-range. It is a bucket. Like, cancel Christmas, as I like to say, because hey, Trey McKinney has come to town already. If the shot is going up for the mid-range, it's going down. And that could really be a major factor in this game, as could the overall bench production, because Craig, you were talking about Roddy Gale before we came on.
Yeah.
And March Roddy was a thing last year. It's even more pronounced in this season.
Yeah, agree. March Roddy seems to be a real thing. He had two tremendous games, both the Alabama game and the Arizona game. He was fantastic. He's always been a good defender. He always comes out and plays defense, in my opinion. But in these games, he was definitely an offensive contributor, both from three, on the boards. He played two very, very good games. In fact, I think if you look at KenPom, and I never quite understand this number. They have an offensive rating number, and I think he was number two in both for Michigan in both of those games in terms of offensive ratings. So, yeah, I also think Will Cheddar, even though his minutes were limited, was pretty good in both of these games. I mean, he certainly fit a role that was useful, and
well, he was important in the first half of that Tennessee game.
Yeah,
because Michigan had pushed it out, and Tennessee had cut it to 15, and it was like, oh well, is this going to be 10 or 20 at the half? And then he hits a couple free throws when nobody can hit a free throw,
right?
And then he challenges, I think, Estrella. He gets vertical on Estrella, and Estrella tries to dunk before the end of the half, and then Michigan gets the last shot,
run out,
and so that's Michigan goes in up 22, and that's ball game. So he had 15 minutes against Tennessee, and like he's been a little marginalized this season, but Michigan needed him in that game, and he came to play, and I was really happy for him to have that moment. Yeah, I mean, there was a video of him like very emotional after making the Final Four, and he deserves it. He went through a lot here.
Mm-hmm. So listen, guys, we talked about all these matchups, all these keys to the game, and we haven't talked about the matchup that I am looking forward to the most. Arizona is probably looking forward to it too, because they're going to believe they have a significant advantage in the battle of the point guards. But this has been for Elliot Cadeau. I think he is his floor generalship, as I make up a word, has been the best has been all season in terms of what does the team need on a given day. Am I a setup guy? And do I need to be, a more of a scorer, 3-point shooter, defender? His defense has been on another level, and he has not been, guilty of, as ridiculous of fouls as we've seen in this season. And he has been craving matchups like this. From the time we went into the Big Ten tournament, he said, I didn't make any alternative team. I want to face every top point guard there is in this. I want every number one guy, was essentially what he said. Well, here he is facing the Big 12 player of the year.
So, I mean, they had to get a lot of time out of him now, right? Because they don't have a backup anymore. And he's having to play more minutes, which means he's got to stay on the court longer, which means he can't have like attempts at steals in the midcourt and whatnot. What he's been great at is anticipating screens. I think maybe like one of the best point guards we've had since X at like knowing where the screen's coming from and getting over there. And that's powerful because that means Michigan doesn't have to like get their matchups all mixed up and they don't get a mouse in the house and whatnot. It happened a couple times against Tennessee and that was it. The guys that give him trouble are guys who can shoot over him, which, it's size thing. But Jalen Bradley's not really a guy who can shoot over him. Braden Burries can do that a little bit. They don't do Arizona's not huge in pull-ups. But Burry scares me a little. Just he was like the 10th overall recruit to 247. He's
a lottery pick.
Yeah, he's a lottery pick. And he can get to the rim and he can get his own basket. And like Brian says, he can get to the free throw line and get free throws down too. So challenging that guy, and this goes back to Roddy Gale when we were talking about Gale. I don't know if Burnett's gonna be able to hang with that dude. That's been kind of Burnett like one step too far from Namari is when you have these super athletic twos, and it's not like you can hide him on the point guard because Bradley is also a fantastic offensive player. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at Arizona, like what matchups are they looking for? They're probably looking at that Burries Namari matchup.
I mean, Cadeau just isn't as big as some other guys, right? But I don't necessarily think that he's exploitable. It's just that, like, when a guy like Bruce Thornton gets switched onto him after dealing with Yaxel Lendeborg, he's just like, oh God, now I can play basketball. So I don't feel like he's a liability. It's just like he's easier to shoot over. And the weird thing about Bradley is that like it almost doesn't matter where he's taking his twos from. Like he's only 51% at the rim when he's 45% away from the rim. So
yeah, he's a tough two maker, man.
Yeah, he's like like he'd be pretty good on a Will Wade team. But he's not. This is not a Will Wade team. I don't want to slander Tommy Lloyd like that, but like he'd be good on it. He's a tough shot maker, and so for me, talking about the individual matchups on the perimeter is a little bit like, well, they're just going to switch as much as they can. The interesting thing to me is like, okay, what are they going to do at the 4 spot? Because you don't want to switch anybody onto Koa Pete, right? You need a big on Koa Pete. So this is maybe going to be more like the Gonzaga game where Michigan did not switch on either big.
Please.
And I mean, but as the season, I guess they lost Huff. So it's not, this Gonzaga was not the Gonzaga that we saw. So
we saw Huff though.
I know we saw Huff, but I was about to say something like, Gonzaga wasn't on that level, but then I was like, well, Huff was injured most of the year. So
yeah,
I was disputing my own take.
So I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna have you guys pick this game at the end of the show. But I want to get some hockey talk in on the other side. So before we get to the break, just a brief thought on the talking point that has been basically the prevailing sentiment. This is the national championship game, and the winner of this game is basically almost assured the national championship. Do you think that little of the other side, or that much of who the winner of this game? What do you think about the Illinois UConn victor?
I mean, I think the winner of this game will be favored in the title game, but there's a strong chance the other team is UConn. So, like, there's no guarantees if you win this game. You know, this is that's the worst team in the Final Four, and it's UConn. And you know, Illinois isn't far off either of those teams. So that title that take is a little much for me.
It's a little much for me too. I think Illinois will actually win that game.
Really?
I think Illinois is better than UConn. Now, Illinois is so three dependent. You know, a lot depends just how are they shooting the ball from outside. But I do like Illinois better than UConn.
I mean, UConn's superpower is they can switch on anybody, and Illinois doesn't care because they're all 7'2" guys named V-shits. So I think Illinois can, as long as they make their threes, can win that game. I'm a little more afraid of. I mean, Illinois was the team that we said was going to be trouble for Michigan after the Wisconsin game.
Well, that's what I said.
They can pull them out. Yeah. Well, I just went with what Ken Palm said as my guess, but like they're both not perfect matchups, right? Just because Connecticut can switch on you whenever they want to. They can, and yeah, those are both top 10 teams in Ken Palm on a neutral site court. Like, no, you're like Brian said, the team who wins this game is going to be favored. I would take Michigan or Arizona over Illinois or Connecticut, but we're still talking about, you know, teams that have a very good case to be the best 4 teams in the country.
Yeah. So listen, I was very bullish on Illinois early in the season. As man, that team offensively, there's just, boy, you better be keeping them off the glass. You better be able to keep up with them scoring wise. And then I watched the Michigan State play them, and I watched Michigan play them. And I think that there's a formula that UConn can actually follow. Like you got to be able to be physical with their Veaches across the front, right? You got to be able to keep them off the offensive glass. Yeah, they're going to be heavy 3 dependent, but they play no defense. So if you have any sort of physicality and athleticism in the front line, you can be disruptive to their plan, but you got to be able to score some. And that's what the teams that they faced thus far haven't been able to do. You've had some teams that have been able to kind of disrupt them a little bit on the other end of the floor. But, you know, Houston, they're a team that all season long has gone into these 6-7 minute offensive lulls. You cannot do that against an Illinois. And in Iowa, their whole game is a lull, right? So they just didn't have enough offensive punch to be able to take advantage of whatever they were going to attempt to do to try to slow down their front court. I think UConn has the ingredients. I think front court wise, they can beat them up. They can keep them off the offensive glass, and they're going to be potent enough offensive, not Michigan potent, but potent enough offensively to win this game. I just don't think that they're physical enough up front, Illinois, to come out on top in this game.
I mean,
it's going to depend. Like, if Terrace Reeves gets 30 rebounds, yeah, it's going to be tough. But if Keaton Wagler is hitting the step backs, it's going to be tough for UConn. So,
yeah, it's going to be
Wagler only had 3 points the first time these teams met. UConn just blew him out at Madison Square Garden in a big game.
You know, that Wagler is not this Wagler.
Right, I agree. He's really mid-season started to come along, that's for sure.
So question for you guys as we get to the break. As far as choke jobs go, where does the Duke loss to UConn rank up there? Or did you not count it?
I'm trying to think of a bigger. Purdue versus Fairleigh Dickinson is a bigger choke job because that wasn't even a good 16 seed, and they had Zach Edey, and so I do feel like you get credit because that was UConn, and it was like I don't think it's the all-time number one in terms of like in the moment. I'm taking applications for things that beat it. As a game, there are bigger ones.
Yeah, that moment. Wow. To lose a game now. And it had a 19-point lead, but That's beyond. That's way, 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 way before the fact where you're up 2 with less than 10 seconds to go, and all you got to do is inbound the ball.
Yeah.
And they did that.
Yeah,
They actually did it.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Good grief.
they did.
Wow. We got to get to a break, though. We'll come back on the other side, get some Frozen Four talk and picks from the fellas. Stay tuned for that here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK, online, thebig1050.com.
Clear on radio.
I agree with Steve Horn. Duke collapse was insane. Just
All they had
hold
to
the
do-
ball.
That's all they needed to do was hold it, and they win the game. The bigger choke jobs. How about Tom Izzo refusing to play his best player in deference to whatever his name was, Ben something or other?
How
Is that
about Tom Izzo?
Tennessee State?
It's nonstop whining
Oh
that
my
the
God.
college basketball world does not bend to his view of how things should be. He doesn't think transfer portal and NIL should be a thing. So therefore, anyone who does it that way isn't doing it the right way. I just don't get why people around here let him get away. I'm talking about media.
Everybody's damn little brother.
Let him get away with that guy. Like, yeah, he's at home for a reason. Like, he chooses not to participate in a big part of the game right now.
Well, he's taken transfers. He had one of the top transfers in the country last year. That the so-called 3-point shooter guy, which he benched. I mean, he was
Well, he
at
was shooting like 18%. So
right. I know,
Like-
but he came in. And he was a top 5 or 6 guy in the transfer portal.
well,
You wouldn't know listening to Tom.
Fiddler.
they brought in
Frankie Fiddler or something like
they
that.
brought in like 4 transfers, and it's like,
Tyson
well,
Walker. Tyson Walker was a transfer.
Yeah, from
just because your transfers suck, like,
yeah. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, he's bringing in transfers. He's paying guys. What's his? He's been
Wait.
paying guys before it was legal to pay guys.
They keep showing that graphic of like the schools that that the final Lead 8 started at or whatever, right? Or this whoever the Sweet 16 started at. And Michigan's got like the Texas Tech one in there. And I always have to like take a moment and be like, that's right. Namari Burnett was not a freshman with us.
Hey, so
He had 2 different schools before he got
I
here.
don't follow hockey like you guys do.
Yeah.
But how big was the Michigan State choke?
Oh my goodness.
that's
Pretty big.
it's not unusual. I mean, it is unusual, but it's not like an all-timer or anything.
yeah.
It ain't Atlanta Falcons blowing a 28-3 lead, but it's up there as being a pretty big choke job. Though.
Yeah, I mean, but
Yeah.
2 goals in the last 5 minutes, that happens.
That happens. Yeah.
You know, it's not unheard of. So
Hockey's just weird because when you get up a 2-goal, 3-goal lead, and you get comfortable and you're just trying to like kill time, and it's not like So, I mean, it almost happened to us, right? Like it was.
Yeah.
I was very nervous at the end of our game, even though Michigan led that game by 3 most of the time after the turnover and the shorty. And that's what happens in hockey. Teams get desperate, and you get that extra. And hockey's such an effort game that when you can get that, oh my God, my season's going to end any second against a good team like Michigan State was playing. Wisconsin's a very good team. I didn't think it was that bad. It does make me a little concerned because I thought some of those goals could have been stopped. And if you're a superior, going to start in the NHL in a couple of years goalie, that should have been stopped. And it's going to be our goalie soon, guys.
Augustine, to me, was a very good goalie his freshman year, and has not really progressed. I mean, how much better is Augustine than Ivan Kovic? I mean, I'm not sure there's much of a separation between the two, and I'm not convinced that Augustine's going to be a big deal in the NHL. I could be wrong, but
And he is the Red Wings plan.
I know
They have a pretty good goalie right now, but he's their plan.
I asked Spath this question yesterday. I said, there are years where, I mean, this is obviously a very good Michigan team, but there are years where it just felt like, is this the most talented team of all time? And they didn't win it in those years. Why in this 2-decade span of Frozen Fours, what's the difference with this team? Is it between the pipes? Is it in net? We'll get to that coming up here. How much longer, Miss?
We're back in about 30.
All right, yeah. So that is where we're going to go coming out of the break. Why is the dynamic for this team different than the dynamic for teams that had like the number 1, number 2, number 3 pick in seeming like every draft for a couple of years in a row?
Okay. I mean, part of it to me is just the randomness of hockey, and the way, and the fact that the NCAA championships are ridiculous. You know,
The
these,
randomness, it's gonna go your way at some point, right?
you would think.
It just hasn't really obviously happened yet.
All right, we're coming back from break. Back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com. Sam Webb, Matt the Miss Missler on the other side. MGoBlog Roundtable about to resume here momentarily. But before we get back to it, I want to tell those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle, get on board with Brighton Ford by going to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. John Kuhner and his crew will take great care of you with deals like the one on the 2026 F-150 XLT 2.7 liter, $287 a month with $3,500 down, or $380 a month with $500 down. How about the 2026 Ford Explorer Active 4-wheel drive, $304 a month with $3,500 down, or $396 a month with $500 down. And last but not least, want to get a little Mustang in your life? The new 2026 Ford Mustang Mach-E Premium all-wheel drive, $529 a month with $3,500 down, or $618 a month with $500 down. For those and other great deals, get on board with Brighton Ford. We're going to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. So I ask you guys to ponder a question for a moment for those who aren't as versed in hockey as you. It would seem that Michigan has had some all-time great teams in terms of overall talent. If you look at the NHL draft, they've had so many trips to the Frozen Four, and yet those teams haven't been able to bring it home. You know, it's been 98 was it? It's been a long, long time. And so they're back in the Frozen Four. And the question, at least my question, is what could give this team an edge and make this one be the one? And Spath said, hey, Sam, this is the best goaltender they've had. And that is what it comes down to. You can have the most talented team on the other side, and if you have a Hellebuck in net, it won't matter as much. And so I'm curious if you guys look at that as the thing, that they haven't had the goaltender that they have this year, all those years prior.
I mean, it's single elimination playoff hockey, and Michigan has been on the bad side of a lot of bad luck. Like, they lose an OT repeatedly. They have goals overturned. There's just no rhyme or reason to the fact that Michigan has not won a national championship despite going to the Frozen Four 9 times. So I think the primary thing I would say that differentiates this team from prior teams is nothing. Like, those were really good hockey teams. This is a really good hockey team. Now, the one thing I would say is sometimes you get those teams where they got Jack Johnson on the first pairing in his second year, and then by the time you get to the third pairing, it's kind of like, well, I don't know what's going on here. And this team lost its number 1 defenseman early in the season and still isn't playing a guy who was a 5th-round pick and has like 200 CHL games under his belt. So that depth in your defensive core, it hasn't happened before. Like, Michigan goes 1 through 6 on defense, and there's nobody who goes out there and you're like, I hope they can get through this shift. So I think that's a little bit of a difference. You have some older players, like you have TJ Hughes, who's a senior. You have Shifsky. You have Jaden Perron, who came over from 2 kind of indifferent years at North Dakota and is, I mean, I have no idea how he didn't score a point per game for the are they still the Sioux?
No, they're the fighting Hawks now. But
the Fighting Hawks, that's right. Sorry. I blanked on what.
Trust me, I've got cousins that are graduates there, and it's still tough for them.
Yeah, I understand, but so like I do think that they're not quite as young as they often are. They're still pretty young, but there are levels to that, and they have more depth. And like you look at the forward core, and it's kind of hard to like figure out like who the second line is versus who the third line is, and they don't really have the top end superstar that they often do. They have a lot of really good players, and I feel like one of the things that the portal is doing, and one of the things that CHL stuff is doing, is for teams like Michigan, you can plug your holes a lot more easily. Like they picked off Cornell's #1 defenseman, and if there is anyone in the portal I want every year, it's Cornell's #1 defenseman. Just the calmest, most disciplined hockey player in America should come over here and babysit our superstars who are a little like squirrely sometimes. So I think they got a good combination, but they're playing Denver, and Denver's a great team with a great tourney record. David Carl's a great coach, and then they're facing down either North Dakota, who's been great all year in the final, or Wisconsin, who's given them serious problems with their forecheck all year. So like I'm not going into this thinking that they have like some sort of super secret sauce that's going to make this the time that, because there wasn't any reason that the times before couldn't have been like that. They just weren't, because it's single elimination playoff hockey. Yeah.
Does Michigan have the best goaltender left?
Yes.
Yeah. I do want to argue a point that Brian made. Brian said there's no difference between this team and those teams. Those teams, I think, had a lot more talent up front. Now, this team's got a lot of draft picks up front, but especially when you consider Hage has got an injury that he was playing with. He was kind of limited in the last game. He still might be not 100%. They don't have that super top end star power at the top. They're getting it from guys like Moldenauer, who's really taken a step forward this year, and Perrano's taking a really step forward this year. I think what's different about this team, and it's felt different all year, is that they hit on their young defensemen. Like how many times we gotten a young guy came up and we're like, okay, I hope he's more playable by the playoff, right? This year they bring in Asher Barnett, Drew Schock. I guess Cole McKinney's not a defenseman, but I kind of consider him one of those guys because he was on the USNTDP with those guys. And what was the story of the Olympics? The story of the Olympics was the U.S. National Development Team, right? Turning United States hockey into something, and that's where those guys came from, and they came ready to play. And it's been a huge, like Brian said, you've had that, why do you have depth on defense? It's because your freshmen came in ready to be top 4 defenders. And I think those guys have made a big difference, even if they're not the best players on the team. It's a spot where we used to have a weakness that this team doesn't have a glaring weakness.
Yeah, we'll get more into this next week. We'll see. I'm gonna see if I can get Alejandro Zuniga to join us live from Vegas. Make him get up super early, right? But we'll see. But I got to get you guys' picks for this Michigan-Arizona game. I'll start with you, Craig Ross. Who comes out on top?
Well, I learned my lesson on this to just do what Brian does. I'm taking Michigan 79-78.
And we talking Michigan winning the national championship too?
Yes. And they'll beat Illinois by 10.
Seth Fisher?
He just took my bit. I was going to go with Ken. I always go with Ken Palm's number, which is exactly what he just went with. So now I'm going to have to say he's a bigger defensive battle than he's giving it credit for. So it's going to be 76-75 Michigan. And then we win the national championship against UConn.
And bring us home, Brian Cook.
I think we're going out to Akron.
Akron?
Yeah. They're coming back. I know they got knocked out, but they're going to come back somehow. They're going to win.
What about Duke? They're still legislating how come Bobby Hurley wasn't called. Maybe they can get that overturned.
No, I gotta pick Arizona so that the Arizona, if Arizona wins, that this podcast isn't put on Arizona podcasts. So Arizona.
Good job.
It's a step ahead. I hear you. All right, that's gonna do it for us, folks. We got to get out. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK online, the Big1050.com.